My next patron question is from Lance, who wants me to compare two comedies involving crime solvers who put on various costumes. Which is better, Who's Harry Crumb or Master of Disguise? Both of these also starred comic actors who got their start on sketch television, and their characters are portrayed as the latest in a long line of crime solvers. Neither film got that much attention on their original release though, and received mostly negative reviews, especially Master of Disguise. Which one do I prefer? This is actually an easy choice, as Who's Harry Crumb definitely wins for me. I personally found this to be an amusing comedy, with some clever one-liners and good use of John Candy. It's almost reminiscent of the Naked Gun films in its use of verbal humor and the interplay between Candy's character, Harry Crumb, and other characters. Some of the funniest parts involve his interactions with Jeffrey Jones, who he is unawares responsible for the whole evil plot, including a sequence at a dinner table. The physical comedy is well done, and the filmmakers come up with a number of funny sequences that keep the story moving. I also like the friendship Harry forms with his client's daughter, as she joins him on the case and there's a mutual respect there. Interestingly enough, I found the least successful attempts at humor were with the disguises worn by Harry. It's not as prominent as Master of Disguise, as he only puts on about 5 disguises, but the jokes involving them did not land for me. The comedy comes more from what he says rather than what he's wearing, although there is one disguise in particular that really has not aged well. Nonetheless, I do find Who's Harry Crumb worked as a solid vehicle for John Candy, and while I can understand why critics would largely dismiss the film and why it's been forgotten, I think it did its job as a silly comedy, and enough of the gags do manage to stick. I was happy to watch it, and to be honest, this was not even a movie that was on my radar until I got this question. I am very familiar with Master of Disguise though. It's gotten a reputation as one of the worst comedies ever made, and I will not dispute that. It's a shame, because I think Dana Carvey is very funny, and he has made me laugh in other films. Master of Disguise was supposed to be his big comeback after his sketch show was cancelled in 1996 and following a botched heart surgery in 1997. Instead, it led to another lengthy hiatus. So I feel bad for knocking this film, because Carvey and the filmmakers are trying to make this work, and it just doesn't. Making this as a vehicle to showcase his impressions was not a bad idea, except the material he's saying with said impressions are not the least bit funny. That integration into the story also comes across as forced, like Dana Carvey had a list of impressions he could do, and so they wrote the scenes to fit them in. For instance, there's a scene where he imitates Quentin from Jaws, so they stick him on a boat all of a sudden. And he can imitate Tony Montana from Scarface, so let's have the villain throw a Latin-themed party. Oh, you can do an impression of George W. Bush? We'll find a spot for that somewhere. The other problem is the lead protagonist, Pistachio Disguisey, has very little personality. The main gag seems to be that he speaks with a phony Italian accent and always has a silly look on his face. And then there's the villain, played by Brent Spiner, who has a running joke where he laughs and then farts immediately afterwards. This was not all that funny the first time they do it, and gets worse anytime they repeat it. Master of Disguise is just one of those comedies with no wit or cleverness or sense of timing. The characters are one note, and the direction does not bring anything to the table. For a film that Carvey is credited as a writer on, it sure is a surprising waste of his talents. There is so little story in the film, they actually fill the credits with extra scenes so that it can go on for about 10 or so minutes and get the runtime to 80 minutes. It's disappointing that when most people think of Dana Carvey, Master of Disguise is what often comes to mind, as he deserves to be remembered for Saturday Night Live, Wayne's World, and The Dana Carvey Show. Anyway, let me know in the comments whether you prefer Master of Disguise or Who's Harry Crumb, and thank you for your question, Lance.